The dawn of civilization. Primitive. Dangerous. Exciting. The handwriting is on the wall. If the human race is ever going to amount to anything, it needs
the most civilized caveman I have ever seen.
Look who's come out of his cave.
Hey everyone, this is James from Cave Dweller Music. Thanks for tuning in. I have my co-host Brandon with me today, and we have three guests today. We have Betty Benedeadly, Braden guests, both from Sheverb and the new album they did together under the Betty Benedeadly name, as well as Brad Frye from Desert Records, who is putting the album out. So thanks again for coming back on the show, Brad, and welcome to the show for the first time. Everyone else.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
No
Thanks
problem.
for having me again, James.
Anytime. You're always welcome. So, Betty, do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself and your music for anyone who's not familiar with your projects?
Sure. My name is Betty Benedeadly. Austin, Texas is a home base, but I've been doing a whole lot of wandering around the Southwest these last couple years. I usually define my music something along the lines of psychedelic, spaghetti western, surfy, rootsy, folky, trance-inducing rock and roll. I like to play guitar too.
Awesome. And so you started originally with Shiva before you started the solo stuff with under the Betty Benedeadly name, right?
Yeah, Sheverb was birthed between myself and Zena Ocasio, the drummer, in 2016. And at the time, actually, we were both going through some big life transitions and picking up our instruments for the first time. I had just picked up guitar in like 2015. Zena was just getting into drums, and Sheverb kind of took off from there. Sheverb was very much a cerebral project that involved us kind of using the spaghetti western lens and calling out a lot of feminist topics. I could talk about that all day. And then let's jump to when Betty Benedeadly started as a solo project. That was really when the pandemic kind of changed all of our lives, and doing a big 5-piece rock and roll band wasn't quite so feasible. I took out the bench seats in the tour van and drove myself to Taos, New Mexico, where I kind of ended up hovering for a couple months, writing a lot of new stuff that was just a lot more introspective. I used the phrase prayer songs a lot during that chapter, and decided that it was time to have a kind of a different outlet for this very different thing that bubbled up during the solitude of pandemic, which is by no means a unique experience. I'm sure there's at least a few souls out there that are going to hear this and it's going to resonate with them, because on the travels, it's been pretty remarkable how many people have experienced a very similar thing and started doing solo projects and collaborations kind of born of a similar energy.
Definitely. There's been a lot of really cool collaborations born out of the last 2 to 3 years that I never would have seen coming in before that. And especially sort of like genre bending stuff between projects that you wouldn't kind of assume go together. And I love it. I love the creativity that's kind of been birthed out of a terrible thing.
Yeah, right. Totally. It's been a bit of a renaissance, really.
Yeah, exactly. As Brendan said, that's how we started our podcast and our site. That was all born out of COVID boredom. And then before we jump into the new album, I just wanted to catch up with Brad for a second. Brad, since we last spoke, you have started your own sort of PR business on the side. Congratulations on that. Oh, I think you might be muted.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, I did, called Desert Bloom PR, and you did too, right?
Yeah, I did too.
Cool.
Yeah, it's the time.
Yeah.
How's that going?
I haven't announced it too much. I've just been kind of keep it on the DL as I'm working slowly at it, because the label is a lot of time, and my band Red Mesa is a lot of time, and I feel like I'm just barely balancing it all, but it's working. So, but it's going good. I got a bunch of clients right now, a bunch of bands.
Awesome.
A lot on the East Coast.
That's cool.
doing the kind of the stoner doom thing, you know.
Yeah, I totally get it. I'm in the exact same boat where I haven't really pushed it publicly just because I don't have the bandwidth to dedicate as much time. If I did, I reckon I could push it like to something, but it's just finding more hours in the day. So
well, when we team up and merge our companies,
exactly,
it's gonna be great.
Be unstoppable. Yeah, and Red Mesa, how's that going? I know you had that single come out since we last spoke on the podcast. Is anything new in the works? Is there anything coming soon? Or
yeah, well, we're finishing writing a record right now, and we're gonna record in April. So it'll
that's
be
awesome.
7 tracks, a lot of riffs. Probably just we seem to get heavier every album, and this one's gonna be. There's a lot going on, a lot of riffs and a lot of psychedelic parts, and yeah, it's gonna be really cool. Can't wait to hear it done.
God, I think this has got to be the new Red Mesa t-shirt or something. A lot of riffs, getting heavier.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. And we got to play and with Betty when Betty came through. Betty and Braden came through with Sheverb and Betty's album release for from the Mesa, and a couple years ago, and that was really cool. And we all got to jam at Sister Bar here in Albuquerque. It was a super fun night.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then I kind of wanted to ask about something you did last year.
That's Wyatt.
I haven't gotten to see little Wyatt in at least a couple months. Oh my goodness. Hello.
Hi.
Because he's got to go to bed.
Yeah.
I know, dude. It's all right. You say hi. You say bye-bye. Okay. Let's say bye-bye. Okay, love you, dude.
Bye.
Anyone listening, that was a surprise guest. And Brad, I just wanted to just quickly ask you about something you did last year, which we haven't had a chance to talk about. I wish we could have been there. Was Monolith on the Mesa. Absolutely awesome that you were involved with that. For anyone who doesn't know, you said it's happening again this year.
So it's Roman Barham. He's really, really close friend of mine, and he's my drummer in Red Mesa, and that's his festival. And I've been really honored to be able to be a part of it. I've been a vendor for the couple years that they've had it. His business partner and very close friend Dano Sanchez passed away in 2021. So Roman did it all by himself in 2022, and that was in September up in Taos this past year, and it was really magical, man. Like like to end the whole 3 days, it was like I Hate God and then Yawning Man, which is like such a weird 1-2 combo to end the whole thing, and it was like perfect, it's really cool. Not doing it this year, but I'll keep you posted about what's happening. There is going to be something Monolith Mesa related happening in Albuquerque, and I'm going to help Roman with that, and I'll help announce it, and I'll definitely let you know, and you guys need to come out for that.
Yeah, we'll be there 100%. We were talking about this actually. Brendan and I are going to make the trip.
Yeah. I was going to make some banners and some tablecloths, get them all branded up on some Cave Dweller stuff, and have some fun.
So a tablecloth?
Yeah.
He's been excited about that.
I'm all about making an awesome little presentation for the booth,
I thought you meant you were going to start selling like Cave Dweller related houseware.
Oh, no.
I mean, no. I'm not
Just
against that.
I mean, we can if you'd like to.
If there's a market.
I'll take a tablecloth for my kitchen table.
There you
awesome.
go. Yeah.
There you go. First order's done.
Cool.
Awesome. Okay. I guess we should talk about At the Institute of Mental Physics. That is the new album coming out. What is the release date on that one? February 17th.
It already came out.
Oh, it's out. Okay. I am late to the party. There you go. I have listened to it. I do love it. Yeah, great album. Awesome work.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
So I guess what was the inspiration for this album? I know each of your albums has a very personal story that kind of relates to what's going on in your life at the time. So what was sort of the driving force behind this one?
Man, I'll just start by saying that there are so many infinite, endless stories kind of packed into this experience. You feel free to reel me in, everyone, at any time, because I could sure go on and on about all of it. But I guess to start, when I was wandering around Joshua Tree in my van with the chickens and writing The Adventures of Mabel and Carter, I befriended some folks who were on the board of the Institute of Mental Physics, which is now known as the Joshua Tree Retreat Center. And I got to play some kind of little backyard parties for this particular group of people, and the music was resonating with them, and I started asking a lot of questions about the Institute of Mental Physics, because I had been on that property once before for Desert Days in, I want to say 2017, Psychedelic Music Festival in Joshua Tree. And so I was kind of familiar with this strange property that had all of these retro mid-century modern structures on it, and didn't really know what they had going on there. But it's a fascinating property that goes back to the 40s, and we can get into that in a minute. It's a really worthwhile, trippy story. But in short, I started asking if they'd ever done artistic residencies at this institute, and they were very open to it. It's been running since the 40s, so it's gone through some different chapters of leadership, and the folks who are running it now are running it as a nonprofit, and they're trying to have some very community-oriented, community-facing programming at the heart and ethos of what they're doing there. And so it was kind of like right conversation, right time, right place, and they were open to having some musicians live on site and write and record an album. So that was like where it all began. But then once those initial doors opened, Braden and I had been collaborating a lot musically. Braden served as musical director and actually did a lot of the recording on both From the Mesa and The Adventures of Mabel and Carter, but had kind of been behind the scenes on those projects and brought in for recording. So for this one, we were collaborating a lot more openly from the beginning, and had kind of settled into this idea of wanting to explore the intersection of psychedelic and folk music.
Awesome.
Yeah, which honestly kind of started when a friend taught me the old folk tune Shady Grove. If you don't know it, look it up after this, and
Grateful Dead?
Immediately. It's a very old folk tune that's ingrained in everyone's DNA, I think. So a friend of mine, what's that?
I said I feel like I've heard the Grateful Dead play it a bunch. Like,
I think you're right.
Yeah.
People have told me that. I can't say I'm familiar enough with the Grateful Dead catalog to comment, but I think you're right.
I'm not a Deadhead personally, but I'll take your word for it, Brendan.
So yeah, an old kind of
blame my
bluegrass
parents,
picking friend had taught me that song, and I started playing it through all the fun, crazy pedals and getting all the psychedelic tones, and that was kind of like the very surface level beginning. But then when we took the idea, that basic formula of where does psychedelic music and folk music intersect, or how do we want to play with that intersection out there, it kind of spun off and took on a life of its own, really. Anything to add to that?
No, I think you just about said it there.
Yeah. I'll take a breather, but I can keep going on this timeline.
I was hoping I wanted to kind of hear that story, the history of the property that you were mentioning.
Oh, totally. Okay. Buckle up. In the 1920s, there was a gentleman, British, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Named Edwin Dingle, who went to China. He was covering the revolution happening there, and as a journalist. and ended up becoming really fascinated with Eastern systems of enlightenment and kind of esoteric knowledge systems, and claims to have walked 900 miles into Tibet and studied with monks, where he realized he was a born-again reincarnate of an old monk soul of this order. They studied with him for years. He learned pranayama, like breath work, meditation, yoga, got very into vegetarianism, and then came to the United States to help share these philosophical systems of enlightenment with the West. Supposedly went down to Joshua Tree, saw a beam of light come out of the sky that told him where he needed to buy a bunch of property and start his kind of center for sharing and teaching, cross-pollinating all kinds of systems of enlightenment. And he called his particular brand or flavor of all of these systems that he took with him from the East, Mentalphysics. And he was doing kind of a lot of preaching, a lot of guided meditation. Again, breath work was very central to it. And he kind of started amassing a following. I think he got to a couple 100,000 people, and he had visions of building a utopian society in the Southern California desert. He bought, or they broke ground, I should say, on the land that is now known as the Institute of Mental Physics in 1941. And then he started engaging Frank Lloyd Wright, who ultimately didn't want to work with him. So the son, Lloyd Wright Jr., was contracted to build a lot of the initial buildings that are there. And they're these historically fascinating. We watched a whole couple hour lecture from the gentleman who just earned this property its historical landmark designation. And he'd done a really interesting job researching specifically a lot of points of interest around the architecture of the sites. But they were quarrying rocks on site and doing some really innovative architectural things, all the while kind of trying to build up an audience and attract people to things like yoga and vegetarianism back then. So Edwin Dingle passed away who became known as Ding LeMay. You'll often see him referred to as that. That was the name he took after studying with the Tibetan monks, Ding LeMay. He passed away in the 70s, and then the property, has gone through a couple of different chapters since then. The cottage that we were given to stay in when we lived there for this 1-month residency was one of the very, very first structures built on site. It was a little cottage from 1941, and it was the neighboring building was the Ding LeMay house, this architectural kind of wonder of a building. All of the buildings around us were uninhabited and have been for a very long time. So it's not we did live in kind of this little ghost town of what once was the headquarters of the Institute of Mental Physics from the 40s. And the one cottage that we had, our whole backyard was just endless acres of undeveloped Joshua Tree. So we did a whole lot of walking and exploring out there, especially when we were in our songwriting chapter. Yeah, in a nutshell, that's the Institute of Mental Physics.
Yeah, it was intended to be an entire city, but the I don't believe the funds didn't quite make it that far. It was going to be the city of mental physics.
Yeah,
that's awesome. There's so much cool sort of unknown history in that whole area, sort of between the California coast and Vegas. Have you, obviously, I'm assuming yes, but have you been out to Slab City and East Jesus and all that as well?
Oh, yes. We have a lot of friends that live out there and play out there pretty regularly.
Yeah, if anyone who's listening who hasn't been there, it's a fascinating place. I highly recommend visit. I've only been once, but it was it's an experience unlike anything else.
I'll add Bombay Beach to that list of amazingly fascinating communities in that little neck of the woods too.
I haven't been to that one. Is that sort of around that area as well?
Yeah. Bombay Beach was a little intended to be a beachside resort community on the Salton Sea that was built up largely in the 50s and 60s. And then the Salton Sea, which is right there by Slab City, experienced kind of like a cascading ecological collapse. And there were massive fish die-offs, and the whole area got pretty gnarly. And a lot of Bombay Beach, which had been this little resort boomtown, got deserted. Almost. It wasn't ever quite a ghost town, but it was largely deserted, like way more than 50%. It was a 1 square mile. It's still there. It's a 1 square mile, basically, little beachside resort, and like all the structures were kind of popped up in the 50s and 60s, largely abandoned by the 90s. And over the last 20 years has been super reclaimed by artists. And kind of people use words like Burning Man and dystopian to describe it. I could take issues with all those descriptors, but it kind of gives you a general gist of what's out there. And our band Sheverb went to go live in Bombay Beach for 1 month together pre-pandemic to write and record our kind of dystopian surf album.
Yeah, and that was the first Sheverb record that I was involved in.
Yeah. He got in the van.
I got in the van.
Awesome. Yeah, and there's those other ones out there. It's like, have you heard the one? It's like ZZYZX Road.
Yes.
Yeah, that one's a crazy. I read the story behind that. That's like super crazy.
The Integratron.
Yeah. Yeah, and then there's an abandoned resort as well. It's like Lake Las Vegas, whatever it's called. That like is abandoned overnight, but too much of a detour. Abandoned places is a whole separate podcast episode.
Yeah.
While we had you on here, I did want to ask, what is your favorite spaghetti western, or top 3? I guess it's a hard choice for one.
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question that I've never been asked.
Yeah.
Really, that's really surprising considering like the inspiration for your music.
Yeah, I'm kind of shocked. This is the first time this is coming up. Well, I have to say that all of the musical projects, creative projects in recent years that play with spaghetti western genres have very much also involved acknowledging a frustration of so much of the problematic values embedded in those classic spaghetti westerns: misogyny, violence, the good stuff. And so from the beginning, like especially with Sheverb, there's been this desire to kind of use the spaghetti western genre or lens or sounds to also call out the fact that embedded in those old stories, we've been kind of worshiping a lot of bad values, and there isn't a whole lot of place made for the other. There isn't an honoring of the other. There's a lot more extractionism of earth and genocide, like portrayed very casually. And so like the whole what spaghetti westerns do I like is kind of a huge. I don't really have a lot of old ones that I like because I get quite angry when I watch a lot of them. I much prefer to just listen to Ennio Morricone, to be honest. But the Western, it's not even a spaghetti Western. The Western that upholds so many good, juicy values that I think everyone should watch if you want a cool Western is a movie called Blueberry.
Okay.
Has anyone heard of it on this call?
No.
Do you remember what it was? Oh, it was released in America under the name Renegade, but it was originally released, I want to say like Norway or Sweden.
Something like one of those
Countries up there, called Blueberry. It's based on a 1970s comic book about a character named Blueberry, and kind of all bound up in that storyline. It's a psychedelic Western, that the natives are the knowledge keepers, and plant medicine is like integral to the truth that everyone's seeking. I'll leave it at that.
Interesting. Okay, I'm gonna have
Eddie
to look that
Izzard's
up.
in it, and Juliet Lewis, really good.
Right.
Michael Madsen, amazing cast.
Huh.
We actually watched it in the cottage in Joshua Tree while making the album.
Yeah, I pushed this movie on
Yeah.
those who collaborate with me.
Brendan, I've been talking a lot, so I'm gonna let you ask some questions for a minute there. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. I was reading about what was it? The Mesa, that album you EP put out, and you put in some the land stewardship projects and such. What's going on with those? Like, so what does that entail, really?
Yeah, that's so cool. And I'm having a moment that it was just, I feel kind of conflicted about being too public facing about this, but from the beginning, any music projects, and I really appreciate that Brad and Desert Records has been supportive of this. I've always wanted a percentage of income earned to go to a nonprofit. And From the Mesa, that nonprofit was the NDN Collective for a Land Back initiative, which is giving money to tribal nations to repurchase their land. And the reason why I chose that recipient for that project in particular was because, man, when everything went crazy during the pandemic and society was kind of a scary place to be, and we all needed to reorient and make sense of the world and maybe get back to what truths were present for us, kind of sinking into solitude up in the Mesa of Taos was like ultimate medicine. And there was a lot of time spent alone in that land and under the stars, and just kind of, getting back to listening to what mattered and trying to understand what lessons were being shared through the land. And at one point I was camping by myself up on kind of the Rio Grande Gorge area, and had this moment of like, man, it's so beautiful here, like, well, I should just buy land up here and I could live here. And I had this moment of realizing that my immediate way of relating to land that I loved and land that had been like so nourishing and given me so much was to try and buy a piece of it so that I could stay on it. And the ridiculousness of that really kind of smacked me upside the face in that moment, because I had just been living for free anyways, cruising around in my van and doing the BLM land thing. And kind of just the grossness of that lens really jumped out at me. And I started thinking about what I could actually do to give back to the land in a way that it, to reciprocate some of the gifts that I had been feeling from it during those crazy, chaotic pandemic times. And I really couldn't think of any better way to give a gift to the land than to help empower the stewards of the land who are going to do right by it.
Nice. Right. Like, if you're going to be there and take care of it, might as well have your monies and things of that nature and your efforts go to people that are going to do the same thing.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for asking. I certainly don't have any issues talking about it, but I do feel it's not something I try to broadcast necessarily.
Yeah, no, it's all good. It's all good. We have a couple projects that we do that we make, to donate to and whatnot. So it's a cool way to give back, and I thought that was an interesting way to do it. That's really neat.
Cool. Thank you for contributing to the last one, that track that you gave us as well. We appreciate that. The mental health sampler last year.
Absolutely. It's so cool.
Yeah.
I really am so inspired by all the people I meet walking this musical path that are doing such cool cool things, using art to do amazing, beautiful things in this world, and watching the ripples go out. Super cool. And thanks for including me in it.
Of course, we actually have another one coming out. We do one every year, so the next one's coming out in May. So we'd love to have a track from the new album if you want to contribute that again. And Brad, obviously, same to you. Anything that you've got going on with Red Mesa, or any of your clients or label mates, love to have you guys involved again.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'll be sending you a bunch of tracks, and I'll make sure to send you one of Betty and Braden's new tracks too.
Awesome. Yeah, we I think it might end up being a lot bigger this year than usual, because normally we're kind of like 3 or 4 weeks in before we get to the number of submissions we have now. It's like between 30 and 40 in 2 days. So yeah,
right.
People are really getting on board. So it's great to see.
Yeah.
Can I ask? I'm curious. I'm curious your story of how you came to that project.
So for me, I have like a lot of very personal connections to mental health sort of issues, I guess, with my family, myself, my wife. I've lost friends to suicide. Just life happens. Mental health is something that affects, I guess, almost everyone in the world in some way or another, whether it's you or someone you love or know. So I definitely think that raising awareness is really important. I mean, the funds are a bonus, but for us, it's all about raising awareness within the community, especially because in the underground and heavy music scene, there's a bit of a stigma, I guess, to being vulnerable, to coming across as, people would call it, weak, which it definitely is not. Talking about your feelings and what's affecting you in your daily life. And we kind of want to break down those barriers a little, maybe make people realize that everyone kind of deals with these things. You're not alone. It's okay to talk about. You should talk about it. You should get help for the things that you need help with. So that's my answer from my perspective. Brendan, I'm sure you have your own reasons.
Yeah, it's definitely a project I love. I do a lot of it. My brother was an addict and had a lot of problems, and basically, we just always tried to help and trying to figure out ways to, help people that were going through addiction. And, I've lost friends, and I lost him, and kind of giving back to mental health is, I don't know, it's important, and it's kind of my way to help carry his torch.
Oh, that's beautiful. I'm sorry for your loss, and thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you. It's all about, giving back and trying to, people are going to do what they're going to do at the end of the day. But if anything that we can do to help, I'll be damned if I don't.
Yeah, right on.
Brendan, did you have any more of those questions before I ask that one I'll be saving that I ask every artist that comes on now?
No, I was good. Yeah, we're good.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a question I've started asking recently, and it seems to always go down well. It's going to be an on-the-spot sort of thing, but if you were stuck on a desert island with a solar-powered Discman and 3 CDs, what would they be?
Oh my gosh.
Yep, it's a tough one.
I like that you put solar-powered, like, Discman,
so you can listen to it all the time.
I think you have some sci-fi writing perhaps in your future or something. Good detail.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that actually exists, but I'd like to hope it does. It could.
My answers change every time he asks this question.
Yeah, it's got to be like that's your answer is the answer of the moment, but it's kind of. Man, okay.
3 CDs.
3 CDs. Okay. Well, I'll just start with probably gonna have to have a Spindrift album on there. If you guys don't know Spindrift, but you like Betty Benedeadly, you should go check out Spindrift. They're a band from LA that plays a lot out in the Joshua Tree area too. That does kind of psychedelic spaghetti western music, and I listened to them kind of on repeat for about 2 years, right when I was deciding to pick up guitar. So I think I've already gone through a chapter of listening almost exclusively to them. I'll say Ghost of the West. I like a lot of their albums, but that's a classic. Um,
Would you take the Hermanos Gutierrez?
ooh,
Oh, I love them.
That's a
that's
good
been
one.
real solid lately.
They're
Yeah.
fantastic. I only found so they're actually playing near my house for only like $20, and I only found out about it after it sold out. It sold out like immediately. So super bummed out. They're incredible.
Yeah. It really seems right for like all the occasions. Like
Yeah.
whatever's going on, just throw some Hermanos Gutierrez on in the background and it's gonna be better than it was moments before.
Agreed.
Okay, I love that. And I mean something probably to dance to, you know? Actually wait, did you say we're on an island? We're on an island.
Yes, Ireland, exactly.
I'm gonna go with some Dick Dale. We're gonna need some surf
nice.
music
Yeah.
to like get through this surfy apocalypse. Yeah. I any old Dick Dale album would make my list. That's my answer. I'm proud of that one.
Great answer. And then Braden, what about you?
Oh man, that's tough. That is so tough. 3 albums.
Braden has a fantastically strange and diverse catalog of music.
Yeah.
I'm always learning new stuff from him.
I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can pull them out. And
If you want to nominate Brad to go first, you can.
yeah. Brad, do you want to do it?
Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. Something by Pink Floyd. Maybe Metal album. Probably go with that one just because it has echoes on it and you can just kind of, it's a long song. It's going to be on an island. Your sense of time is going to be stretched out.
Oh yeah.
So Metal, I guess, by Pink Floyd. I love Indian classical raga music, so something by Ali Akbar Khan, I would say.
Ooh, I'm learning something new about you, Brad.
I listen to a lot of that at home, especially in the morning. I try to find old classical Indian raga music on vinyl or CDs, and I like that stuff because I can't count it. Like I don't know how to count it. And so I don't understand how they play it. And I don't understand how you play those instruments. So all of that adding into I like what I'm hearing a lot makes it just extremely mystical and it's I could just listen to it all day long and I don't get tired of it because I can't figure out what they're doing or catch a riff or something, you know what I mean? So that, and then oh God, I'd have to have something heavy just to calm me down. Oh shit, I don't know, Sabbath or Tool or Caius or something in there, you know. Yeah.
Good spread. Yeah.
I hope we're on the same abandoned island.
All using the same solar powered CD player.
Yeah. It's my
turns.
turn.
You got 6 CDs.
Yeah.
Share the wealth.
Braden, there's no pressure. If you can't narrow it down to
My
3,
hands are sweating. I can't.
it's okay. It's totally fine. Don't worry. Yeah.
I'll be on their desert island too and listen to their CDs.
Exactly. We can all share. Just before we wrap up, just because I have to duck out, unfortunately, I double booked myself with a show that's on tonight that I completely got the dates wrong on. Betty, you said that you might have another residency show coming up at the at Joshua Tree. Do you want to tell people about that so they can be ready for it?
Yes, I would say follow Betty Benedeadly on the socials if you do that thing. Because we are cooking up some really special stuff in May. We hope to return to the Institute of Mental Physics, and we'll be doing some real unique shows, pulling together some of the friends that made at the Institute of Mental Physics. Even though Braden and I wrote the music together and largely recorded it, we did wrangle in quite an incredible group of local musicians, local to Joshua Tree, that became friends out there that we invited to collaborate. We wanted to make it like as inclusive as possible. So we have Janie Cowan incredible bass player playing stand-up bass on most of the tracks. Victoria Williams plays the 21 stringed Chinese instrument, the guzheng.
Yeah.
Guzheng. I might be saying that wrong, and I apologize if I am. She plays that on Lullaby to the Stars. And then we have Ron Therio playing a fantastically weird instrument that he made called the Xyla Monster. So whatever, more story. We'll just have to do this again, and we can tell you more of the weird stories behind some of each of the tracks, really. But yeah, follow Betty Benedeadly on socials, and I'll be posting far and wide about all of these unique offerings that will be happening around Joshua Tree in May. And between now and then, we are also cooking up all kinds of shows through the Southwest, and we'll be making announcements on the socials too.
Yeah, we'd love to have you back on again before that show, actually, so we can talk more about the tracks and maybe help people hear about the show a little more heading up to the time.
That'd be awesome. Love to.
And Brad, I want to get you back on as well. So I want to talk a little more about that amazing split that you've got coming up, the Legends of the Desert Volume 3 with Fatso Jetson and Dalai Lama. That's such a cool split that you managed to put that together. I love that.
Yeah, that's cool. We got to talk about that because that's kind of how I first met Betty. As I was talking to Betty and seeing if Sheverb wants to be part of that Legends of the Desert series. I was calling it the Gunslinger series, and that kind of goes back to the conversation she hit on about sort of our perspective of the American West and Western movies and cowboys and Indians and stuff like that. And part of the whole reason that it ended up being called Legends of the Desert, not the Gunslinger series, is a conversation that Betty and I had in person. And that led to the pandemic happening. Well, that conversation didn't create the pandemic. But
butterfly effect, Brad. Who
knows? Pandemic happened, and Betty sent me an email that went to my spam folder.
Oh, I forgot about that.
And it was her submission of from the Mesa album, and asked if I wanted to put it out on Desert Records, and I didn't know that I had it. And somehow it circled back around, or I looked in my spam folder. I was like, oh fuck, what is this? And I checked it out. I was like, oh yeah, this is like so perfect. This is like exactly the vibe of music that fits perfectly into what I'm doing with Desert Records, and bands that capture this vibe and the environment of the desert and the music. And it doesn't matter if it's ambient or experimental or instrumental or singer-songwriter or a rock band, or it's heavy metal or whatever, or doom. It kind of covers, it's more than that. It's capturing this feeling and the essence and a true love for the desert areas of, whether it be North America or Africa or wherever, kind of capturing that. And or South America. I mean, there's a lot of cool deserts all over the world on pretty much all continents. And
yeah, Australia's mostly desert.
Yeah, right.
We got a lot of places to go.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so that's sort of like the whole thing. That was my thing with the label. And so it was just so cool. And so I'm just really happy to have these guys, on the label, and we're working with them. And it's just always fantastic to work with them. So Betty Benedeadly and Braden Guess's debut full-length album is out on Desert Records now. Digital download and CDs on Bandcamp and on www.desertrecords.us. Streaming on all major platforms. We are working on some other special physical releases for this that are going to come out throughout the next year to satisfy everybody's favorite physical format. So we're working on that. But go check it out now. It's super rad.
It's catchy, man. It's super catchy.
Yeah, I hard agree, definitely. And I'm definitely this is gonna be part one of this interview. We're gonna pick things up and carry on talking about this album and a few of the other things we mentioned tonight. So if you've enjoyed this chat, everyone, stay tuned. There will be a part two. And thank you to everyone for coming on. We really appreciate you taking the time. Sorry, I had to cut it short on my end, but we appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you for what you're doing. Appreciate being on.
Yeah, thank you.
No
Cheers.
problem.
Thanks,
Anytime.
James and Brendan. You guys have a great one. Thanks so much for having us on.
You too.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
And anyone listening, tune in next time. We'll have another guest,
Everyone,
and
thanks for
stay tuned for
listening.
part
This is
2.
James from Cave Dweller Music. We have a very special episode for you today, which features 3 parts, each of which has guests who are going to talk about their year in music. We have a round table featuring record label owners from multiple labels that CDM are friends with. We have...